Commander Vexthara pressed her six-fingered hand against the cold metal wall of the observation station. Through the massive viewing window, she could see Jupiter's swirling storms far below. But her attention was not on the gas giant. Her large, dark eyes were focused on the small blue dot in the distance. Earth. For 300 years, her people had watched the humans. The Zelani Federation had 12 different alien races working together. They were advanced, peaceful, and very smart. They had technology that could destroy planets or create new stars. They could travel between galaxies in ships that moved faster than light itself. The humans knew nothing about any of this. Vexthara had been watching Earth for 20 years now. She had seen humans fight terrible wars. She had watched them poison their own air and water. She had seen them kill each other over pieces of land, different beliefs, and resources. The humans seemed violent and stupid, but something was changing. The human named Dr. Lisa Martinez stood in front of a large crowd in what the humans called New York City. She was small compared to Vexthara, with brown skin and black hair tied back in a simple style. Her voice was strong as she spoke to the crowd. "Today, we take the first step toward the stars," Lisa said. "The Global Space Initiative will unite every nation on Earth. We will work together to build ships that can carry us to other worlds." Vexthara watched through hidden cameras that the Zelani had placed around Earth years ago. The crowd cheered, but she knew that human emotions changed quickly. They would probably start fighting again within days. In a workshop in what humans called Texas, a man named Jake Thompson was working on engine designs. He had oil on his hands and sweat on his forehead. Jake was building something that should have been impossible for humans to understand. Yet there it was, taking shape under his skilled hands. "Amy, come look at this," Jake called to his partner, Doctor. Amy Foster walked over, carrying a tablet filled with complex numbers and equations. She was younger than Jake, with red hair and green eyes that seemed to see everything. Amy was one of the smartest humans on their planet, though she would never know how smart compared to other species in the galaxy. "The fusion core is stable," Amy said, looking at Jake's work. "If this works, we can power a ship for hundreds of years without stopping." Jake smiled. "It will work. It has to work." Vexthara made notes in her daily report. The humans were developing fusion technology much faster than predicted. The Zelani scientists had calculated it would take humans at least 500 more years to achieve stable fusion. Yet here they were, solving problems that had taken the Zelani thousands of years to understand. But the Federation Council did not care about her reports. "Commander, you worry too much about these primitives," Counselor Prime Velteran had told her during their last communication. His blue skin had the patterns that showed amusement among the Zelani. Humans destroy everything they touch. They will never leave their little planet. Even if they do, they will kill each other before they travel far. Vexthara was not so sure. She had been watching humans longer than anyone else in the Federation. She had seen them do impossible things when they worked together. On Earth, a man named Steve Harrison was preparing for the most dangerous job any human had ever attempted. Steve was a pilot, one of the best his species had ever produced. He had flown every type of aircraft humans had built. Now he would fly something completely new. The ship was called Horizon. It was small, built for only one person, but it contained technology that would change everything. Jake Thompson and Amy Foster had spent 5 years building its engine. Dr. Lisa Martinez had convinced 30 different countries to pay for it. And Steve Harrison would be the first human to travel faster than light. "You ready for this, Steve?" Lisa asked as they stood in the underground launch facility. The place was huge, carved out of solid rock beneath the desert. Hundreds of the best human scientists and engineers worked here in secret. Steve looked. at the ship. It was silver and smooth, nothing like the rockets humans had built before. "I was born ready, Doc. Let's see what this thing can do." Vexthara watched as the human ship prepared for launch. She had sent urgent messages to the Federation Council, warning them that humans were about to achieve faster-than-light travel. Their response had been the same as always. The Council did not believe her. The Horizon launched at exactly noon Earth time. Steve Harrison felt the ship accelerate unlike anything he had ever experienced. The stars outside began to stretch into lines of light. Then, in an instant that felt like forever, the ship jumped. Steve found himself in empty space, far beyond Earth's solar system. His instruments showed that he had traveled 20 light years in less than a second. He had done what no human had ever done before. "Control, this is Horizon," Steve said into his radio. "Jump successful. I repeat, jump successful." Back on Earth, the control room exploded in celebration. Lisa Martinez had tears in her eyes. Jake Thompson and Amy Foster hugged each other. They had proved that humans could travel to the stars. Vexthara felt something she had never experienced while watching humans. She felt afraid that she sent another urgent message to the Federation Council. This time, she marked it as a priority. Alert. Humans had achieved faster-than-light travel centuries ahead of schedule. They were no longer trapped on their world. The response came back within hours. Counselor Prime Velterana's message was short and dismissive. "Commander, your concerns are noted, but not shared. One successful test means nothing. Humans lack the wisdom to use such technology properly. They will destroy themselves within a generation. Continue observation. Do not interfere." Vexthara turned back to her viewing window. Earth looked so small and peaceful from this distance. But she knew that appearance was deceiving. The humans were changing, growing stronger and smarter with each passing day. Over the next months, she watched as humans began working together in ways she had never seen before. Countries that had been enemies for centuries started sharing technology and resources. The Global Space Initiative grew from a small organization into something that united the entire planet. Dr. Lisa Martinez was elected as the first Director General of Earth's Unified Space Command. Jake Thompson opened workshops in 12 different countries, teaching other humans how to build the new engines. Amy Foster established schools where the brightest human minds learned physics and engineering that rivaled Zilani Science. Steve Harrison became the leader of humanity's test pilot program. He trained dozens of other humans to fly the new ships. Each test flight went further than the last. Soon, human ships were exploring star systems hundreds of light years from Earth. And through it all, the Zilani watched in silence. Vexthara filed report after report, documenting humanity's rapid progress. She watched as humans built their first space stations around other stars. She observed as they developed new technologies that solved problems the Zilani had never even considered. Most surprising of all, the humans did not fight each other. The violence and conflict that had marked their history seemed to disappear. As they focused on reaching the stars, they shared discoveries freely between their nations. They helped each other solve difficult problems. They protected each other during dangerous missions. The Federation Council continued to ignore her warnings. They were convinced that humans would eventually return to their violent ways. The Zilani had seen many species rise and fall. They believed they understood how primitive civilizations developed, but Vexthara knew they were wrong. She had watched humans more closely than anyone else in the Federation. She had seen something in them that her superiors refused to acknowledge. The humans were not just another primitive species destined for self-destruction. They were something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. And soon, they would be ready to leave their home forever. As Vexthara finished her latest report, she looked out at the stars. and wondered what would happen when the humans finally departed. The galaxy was about to change in ways the Federation could not imagine. The humans were coming, whether the Zelani were ready or not. 50 years had passed since Steve Harrison made the first human jump to the stars. Commander Vexthara was older now, her blue skin showing the silver marks that came with age among the Zelani. She still watched Earth from her station near Jupiter, but what she saw there filled her with growing unease. The planet below was almost empty. Massive ships hung in orbit around Earth like sleeping giants. Each one was longer than the largest cities humans had ever built. The ships were beautiful in their simple design, made of metals that gleamed silver and white against the black of space. Humans called them generation ships, built to carry thousands of people on journeys that would last many years. Captain Helen Brooks stood on the bridge of the flagship vessel, New Earth. She was in her 40s, with gray starting to show in her brown hair. Helen had trained for 20 years to command this ship. Around her, the bridge hummed with quiet activity as her crew prepared for departure. "Status report," Helen said to her second officer. "All systems green, Captain," Lieutenant Commander Danny Walsh replied. 47,000 people aboard. Supplies loaded for a 50-year journey. "We're ready to launch on your order." Helen nodded and looked at the main screen. It showed Earth below them, blue and white and beautiful. She had been born on that world. Most of her crew had been born there too. But none of them would ever see it again. On another ship nearby, Captain Mike Rodriguez was giving similar orders. His vessel, Endeavor, carried 32,000 people and enough equipment to build an entire city on whatever world they found. Mike was younger than Helen, but his dark eyes held the same determination. "This is it, people," Mike said to his bridge crew. "Today we take humanity to the stars. Today we become something more than we've ever been before." In the command center on Earth's largest space station, Admiral Paul Hayes watched the fleet prepare to depart. Paul was an old man now, one of the few who remembered when humans were still trapped on their home planet. His gray beard and lined face showed the weight of the years, but his mind was still sharp. Beside him stood Commander Sarah Johnson, his second in command. Sarah was responsible for the complex job of moving millions of people across the galaxy. She had planned every detail of the great departure, from food supplies to fuel requirements, to the thousands of other things needed to keep humans alive. In space, "Admiral, the last civilians are boarding now," Sarah reported. "All ships report ready for departure." Paul nodded slowly. This was the moment they had all worked toward for 50 years. The moment when humanity would leave their birth world forever and spread across the galaxy. But they were not leaving alone. They were being watched. Vexthara adjusted her sensors to get a better view of the human fleet. What she saw amazed her. The ships were arranged in perfect formation, each one protecting the others. The humans had organized themselves with military precision, yet there was no conflict, no fighting over who would lead or which ship would go first. This was not what the Federation had expected. Dr. Kate Williams, now an elderly woman with white hair and kind eyes, worked in her laboratory aboard the New Earth. She had spent her entire life developing the technology that would guide these ships to distant worlds. Her quantum navigation system could find planets suitable for human life across thousands of light years. "The calculations are complete," Kate told Captain Helen over the ship's communication system. "I've found 17 worlds that can support human colonies. Each fleet will go to a different system. We'll spread out across this part of the galaxy." Helen smiled. Kate had been working on this project since before Helen was born. The old scientist had devoted her entire life to making this moment possible. "Thank you, Doctor," Helen said. "Your work will save our species." On Earth's surface, the last few humans who chose to stay behind watched the sky. Most of Earth's population had chosen to leave, but some wanted to remain on the world, where humanity was born. They would maintain the libraries and museums, keeping human history safe until the colonies were established. Dr. Ryan Clark was one of those who stayed. Ryan was a xenobiologist, a scientist who studied alien life. But Ryan had a secret that he had never shared with anyone. Years ago, his instruments had detected the Zilani observation posts hidden throughout the solar system. Ryan knew humanity was being watched. He knew there were aliens out there, judging humans and finding them wanting. But he had decided to say nothing. Let them watch, he thought. Let them see what humans could really do. Standing in his laboratory in what used to be called Geneva, Ryan looked up at the stars through his telescope. He could see the massive human fleet preparing to depart. Soon, the watchers in the darkness would see what humanity was truly capable of. The departure began at dawn, Earth time. One by one, the great ships activated their faster-than-light drives. The space around them bent and twisted as the ships prepared to jump across impossible distances. Vextara watched in fascination as the first ship disappeared in a flash of light. Then another, then another. Within hours, the entire human fleet had vanished, leaving Earth's orbit empty, except for the few smaller ships that would stay to guard the homeworld. What disturbed Vextara most was how organized the departure had been. There had been no panic, no fights over resources, no ships trying to leave ahead of schedule. The humans had shared everything equally. They had protected the weak and helped those who needed assistance. Captain Helen Brooks felt the familiar sensation of faster-than-light travel as the new Earth jumped toward its destination. Around her, the bridge crew worked calmly at their stations. In the ship's residential areas, 47,000 people were beginning new lives among the stars. "Jump complete, Captain," her navigator reported. "We're in the Ross 128 system. Sensors detect one planet in the habitable zone." Helen smiled. Their new home was waiting for them. Meanwhile, Captain Mike Rodriguez's ship emerged in a different system entirely. The Endeavour had traveled to Wolf 359, where they found two worlds that could support human life. Mike's colonists would have their choice of planets to settle. Across the galaxy, other human ships were arriving at their destinations. Each fleet found worlds rich with resources and perfect for human colonies. Dr. Kate Williams' navigation system had worked perfectly, guiding humanity to dozens of new homes among the stars. But the humans had not forgotten they were being watched. Commander Sarah Johnson, now aboard the command ship Liberty, sent a message back toward Earth using humanity's fastest communication system. The message was not directed at the human homeworld. It was aimed at the hidden Zilani observation post near Jupiter. "To those who watch from the shadows," Sarah's message said, "we know you are there. We have always known. We leave in peace, with no anger toward you for keeping your distance. Perhaps someday we will meet as friends. Until then, we wish you well." Vextara received the message with shock. The humans had known about the Zilani all along. They had known they were being watched, judged, and found lacking. Yet they had never tried to make contact. They had never demanded recognition or aid. Instead, they had simply proven themselves through their actions. The Federation Council, when they finally learned of humanity's departure, reacted with their usual dismissal. Counselor Prime Velteran sent a message to all observation posts. "The humans have left their system as predicted. They will likely destroy themselves within a generation through war or resource conflicts. Continue monitoring from a distance. Do not interfere." But Vextara knew better. She had watched these humans for 70 years. She had seen them overcome every challenge through cooperation and determination. The humans who had left Earth were not the same violent, chaotic species the Federation remembered. They had become something more as reports began to come in from other Zelani observation posts throughout the galaxy, a picture emerged that frightened. The Federation Council. Human colonies were thriving. Their ships patrolled vast areas of space, protecting not just themselves, but any other species they encountered from pirates and raiders. The humans had not conquered the galaxy. They had become its guardians, and they had done it all while the Federation watched in silence, too proud to acknowledge what was happening until it was too late to change anything. The galaxy would never be the same. 100 years had passed since the last human ship left Earth. Commander Vexthara was long dead, replaced by her daughter, Commander Lexthara, who had inherited her mother's post watching the empty human homeworld. The blue planet still turned in its orbit, but only a few thousand humans remained on its surface, keeping the old cities and museums safe. The galaxy had grown quiet in those 100 years. The Yelani Federation continued their peaceful ways, exploring new worlds and studying the mysteries of space. Their 12-member races lived in harmony, sharing knowledge and resources. They believed their advanced civilization was the pinnacle of what intelligent life could achieve. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The first sign of trouble came from the outer rim of the galaxy. Admiral Zeph Kareen of the Zelani Defense Fleet received urgent messages from their most distant observation posts. Ships were approaching. Ships unlike anything the Federation had ever seen. These ships were black and angular, covered in weapons and armor. They moved in perfect formations, like hunters stalking prey. When they found inhabited worlds, the result was always the same: complete conquest in a matter of days. The Krell Empire had arrived. The Krell were a species that had evolved from predators on a harsh world where only the strongest survived. They were tall and powerful, with thick gray skin and sharp claws. Their technology was built for one purpose: war. They had conquered dozens of star systems on the far side of the galaxy before turning their attention to Federation space. Admiral Zeph Korin stood in the command center of the Federation's main defensive station, watching reports come in from the frontier. His pale blue skin had the worried patterns that showed deep concern among his people. "How many ships?" he asked his tactical officer. "At least 3,000, Admiral," came the reply. "They're moving in coordinated fleets, hitting multiple systems at once." Zeph Kareen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's temperature. The Federation had never faced a threat like this. Their ships were built for exploration and peaceful contact, not warfare. Their weapons were designed to destroy asteroids and clear space debris, not fight enemy fleets. The first major battle took place in the Vega system, where the Federation had established a research colony 300 years earlier. The colony's orbital defenses were considered the best in Federation space. Protected by energy shields and automated weapon platforms, the Krell destroyed them in less than 6 hours. Commander Telvarin watched from the bridge of his research vessel as the Krell fleet surrounded the colony. The enemy ships were brutal in their efficiency. They targeted the orbital stations first, then the planetary defenses, then the civilian evacuation ships trying to escape. "Send a distress signal to Federation Command," Telvarin ordered. "Tell them the colony is lost." The message that reached Admiral Zeph Kareen was brief and terrifying. The Vega colony, home to 2 million Federation citizens, had been completely overrun. The survivors were being loaded onto Krell transport ships as slaves. This was not the civilized warfare the Federation understood. This was conquest in its most brutal form. Meanwhile, in a distant part of the galaxy, humans were thriving. On the world they called New Haven, Mayor Dan Miller walked through the busy streets of Harmony City. The human colony had grown to over 2 million people in the 100 years since the generation. Ships arrived. Dan was a 4th-generation colonist, born on New Haven and proud of what his people had built there. The city was beautiful, with tall towers that gleamed in the light of the system's two suns. Gardens and parks were scattered throughout the urban areas, giving the place a peaceful, welcoming feel. But New Haven was not defenseless. Colonel Lisa Wong stood in the command center of the planet's orbital defense network. Lisa was a military engineer who had spent 20 years designing and building the most advanced defensive systems humans had ever created. Her work was based on the knowledge brought from Earth, but improved with a century of experience living among the stars. "Colonel, we're detecting ships approaching the system," her sensor operator reported. "Configuration matches Krell Empire vessels." Lisa nodded calmly. They had been expecting this. Human intelligence networks had been tracking the Krell advance for months. Unlike the Federation, humans had prepared for war. "Activate all defensive platforms," Lisa ordered. "Launch the fighter squadrons. Send word to the civilian population to move to the underground shelters." The Krell fleet that approached New Haven was confident of easy victory. They had destroyed dozens of Federation worlds with minimal losses. These humans were supposed to be even more primitive than the Zalani. The Krell learned otherwise within. The first hour of battle, the human orbital defenses opened fire with weapons that the Krell had never encountered before. Adaptive energy beams that could change frequency to penetrate any shield. Kinetic projectiles that moved too fast for point defense systems to intercept. Most surprising of all, the human weapons seemed to learn from each attack, becoming more effective as the battle continued. Captain Greltak of the Krell battleship destroyer watched in amazement as his fleet's advance was stopped cold. The humans were fighting with intelligence and coordination that impressed even the veteran Krell commander. "Sir, we've lost 8 ships already," his tactical officer reported. "The human defenses are stronger than expected." Greltak growled, showing his sharp teeth. "Then we attack with everything we have. These humans will learn to fear the Krell." But the human response was swift and devastating. Fighter ships launched from hidden bases on New Haven's moons, piloted by men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment. The fighters were small and fast, darting between the massive Krell warships like insects around giants. Captain Nicole Brown led Red Squadron in a daring attack on the Krell flagship. Her fighter was tiny compared to the enemy battleship, but it carried weapons that could punch through the thickest armor. Nicole had been born in space, raised on one of the generation ships, and she flew with the skill that came from a lifetime among the stars. "This is Red Leader," Nicole said over the radio. "Beginning attack run on the enemy flagship." Her squadron followed her through the Krell defensive fire, their ships dancing around enemy weapons with impossible grace. When they struck, the results were immediate. The Krell flagship began to list as its engines failed. The battle lasted 3 days. When it was over, the Krell fleet was in full retreat, leaving behind the wreckage of dozens of their ships. New Haven had not only survived the attack, but had dealt the Krell Empire its first major defeat. On another human world called New Horizons, Dr. Ben Patterson read the reports from New Haven with satisfaction. Ben led a research team that had been developing defensive technologies for 50 years. His work was built on the foundation laid by his predecessor, Dr. Janet Reed, who had pioneered the adaptive shield systems that had saved New Haven. "The Krell will be back," Ben told his team, "and they'll bring more ships next time. We need to be ready." Ben's laboratory was one of dozens scattered across human space. Each one worked on different aspects of defense and warfare. The humans had not been idle during their century of expansion. They had learned, grown, and prepared for threats that others could not imagine. The news of humanity's victory spread quickly through both human and Federation space. For the humans, it was proof that their defensive preparations had been worthwhile. For the Federation, it was a shocking revelation. The primitive humans who had left their homeworld a century ago were not only surviving, but actively defeating the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. The species the Federation had dismissed, as violent and chaotic, had become the galaxy's most effective defenders. Admiral Zefkarin received the reports with growing amazement. The human colony had not just repelled the Krell attack. They had done so with minimal losses while inflicting devastating casualties on the enemy. The humans possessed military technology and tactical knowledge that far exceeded anything in Federation space. As more reports came in from the frontier, a pattern emerged. Wherever the Krell encountered human colonies, they were defeated. The humans fought with a combination of advanced technology, brilliant tactics, and unbreakable courage that the Krell could not overcome. But the Federation worlds continued to fall. The Krell learned to avoid human-controlled space, but they pressed their attack against Federation colonies with renewed fury. System after system fell to their advance. Millions of Federation citizens were killed or enslaved. The proud civilization that had considered itself superior to all others was being destroyed piece by piece. Admiral Zefkarin looked at the tactical display showing the Krell advance and felt despair. At the current rate of conquest, the Federation would be completely overrun within 5 years. Their advanced technology and peaceful philosophy were no match for an enemy that lived only for war. The galaxy's greatest civilization was dying, while the species they had dismissed as primitive had become its most powerful defenders. The irony was not lost on him. The great council chamber of the Zalani Federation had never felt so empty. Counselor Prime Veltaran sat at the head of the curved table, his blue skin pale with exhaustion and fear. Around him, the surviving council members from the 12 member races looked defeated. Their proud civilization was crumbling, and they all knew it. The Krell have taken the Centauri colonies, reported Counselor Felandra, her voice barely above a whisper. 3 billion citizens, gone. The numbers were becoming meaningless. Every day brought reports of new defeats, new worlds lost, new millions dead or enslaved. The Federation's fleets had proven useless against the Krell war machine. Their beautiful, peaceful ships were destroyed as fast as they could be built. Veltaran was old now, ancient even by Zalani standards. He had been one of the voices dismissing Commander Vex Thara's warnings about humanity over a century ago. He had called humans primitive, violent, and doomed to destroy themselves. The memory of those words now felt like poison in his mind. "We have one option left," Veltaran said, his voice heavy with shame. "We must ask the humans for help." The silence that followed was deafening. For 300 years, the Federation had watched humanity from the shadows, judging them and finding them wanting. They had never made contact, never offered friendship or aid. They had observed in silence as humans left their homeworld, believing the primitive species would soon destroy itself among the stars. Now, those same humans were the galaxy's only hope. "Sir," said Counselor Thexmeran, his yellow skin showing the patterns of deep concern, "the humans owe us nothing. We watched them struggle and grow without ever helping. Why would they help us now?" Veltaran closed his large eyes. The young counselor was right. The Federation had no claim on human friendship or loyalty, but they had no choice. The alternative was the complete destruction of their civilization. "Because," Veltaran said slowly, "if the humans are anything like what our observers reported, they will help anyway. That appears to be what humans do." Within days, the fastest ships in the Federation fleet were racing toward human space. Each ship carried the same message, transmitted on all frequencies the Federation knew how to use. It was a plea for help from a dying civilization to the species they had once ignored. The human response came from Admiral Julia Carter, commander of the Human Defense Fleet. Julia operated from Unity Station, a massive space fortress that orbited the human world called Sanctuary. The station was bigger than most cities, bristling with weapons and defensive systems that could protect an entire star system. Julia was in her 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had been born on one of the generation ships and had spent her entire life preparing humanity's defenses. When the Federation's message arrived, she was not surprised. "We've been watching the Krell advance for months," Julia told her staff during the emergency meeting. "We knew this request would come eventually." Commander Kevin Walsh, Julia's tactical officer, looked at the star charts showing Krell positions. "Admiral, we could end this war quickly if we wanted to. Our fleets are more than a match for the Krell, but do we really want to save the Federation? They've ignored us for over a century," Julia nodded. The question was fair. Humanity had grown strong without Federation help. They had built their own civilization, developed their own technology, and protected their own people. They owed the Zilani nothing. "That's exactly why we have to help them," Julia said. "Because we can. Because it's the right thing to do. And because if we don't, billions of innocent people will die." The meeting that would decide the fate of two civilizations took place on the neutral world of Crossroads. The planet served as humanity's diplomatic hub, a place where humans met with the few alien species who had made peaceful contact over the years. Ambassador Alex Thompson led the human delegation. Alex was a descendant of Jake Thompson, one of the engineers who had built humanity's first faster-than-light ships. He had his ancestors' practical approach to problems and his determination to find solutions that worked. Across the negotiating table sat the remnants of the Federation High Council. Velteran looked ancient and broken, his proud bearing replaced by desperate humility. Beside him sat Admiral Zeph Corin and the other surviving Federation leaders. "We come to you in our darkest hour," Velteran began, his voice shaking with emotion. "We know we have no right to ask for your help. We watched your people from the shadows for centuries, without ever offering friendship or aid. We judged you and found you wanting. We were wrong." Alex Thompson listened without interruption. Around him, his diplomatic team took notes and monitored the alien leaders for signs of deception. But there was no deception here, only desperate honesty. "The Krell Empire will destroy us within months if nothing changes," Admiral Zeph Corin added. "Our fleets cannot stop them. Our weapons cannot harm them. Only humanity has proven capable of defeating their forces." Ambassador Thompson leaned back in his chair. The human delegation had expected this moment for years. They had watched the Krell advance and the Federation's failures. They had prepared for this conversation down to the smallest detail. "What exactly are you asking for?" Alex said. "Everything," Velteran replied. "We need your military technology. We need your tactical knowledge. We need your ships and your soldiers. We need you to fight a war that we cannot win alone." The negotiations continued for 3 days. The humans made no demands for apologies or acknowledgement of past wrongs. They focused on practical matters: how many ships each side could contribute, where the battles would be fought, how supplies would be distributed. General Patricia Hayes, commander of human ground forces, worked directly with her Federation counterparts to plan joint operations. Patricia was a career soldier who had trained for alien contact her entire life. She was tough, smart, and completely focused on winning the war. "We'll need to integrate our forces completely," Patricia told the Federation military leaders. Human and Zilani crews on the same ships, shared command structures, complete tactical coordination. The Federation officers agreed without hesitation. Their pride had been broken by months of defeat. They were willing to do whatever the humans required, if it meant survival. But the humans also made one thing absolutely clear. Admiral Julia Carter delivered the message personally during a joint strategy session. "This will be a true alliance," Julia said, her voice firm. "Shared risks, shared sacrifices, shared victories. We will not fight your war for you while you hide in safety. If you want our help, you fight beside us." The Federation leaders agreed. They had no choice. Back on Earth, Dr. Ryan Clark read the reports of the negotiations with satisfaction. Ryan was now very old, one of the last humans who remembered the early days when his people were still trapped on their homeworld. He had kept the secret of the alien watchers for over a century, waiting for this moment. They finally came to U.S., Ryan said to his assistant, a young woman named Lucy Martinez, who was descended from the first Director General of Earth's space program. After all these years of watching in silence, they finally asked for help. Lucy looked at the data coming in from the frontier. The Krell advance had slowed as they prepared for humanity's entry into the war, but they were still destroying Federation worlds at an alarming rate. "Will we be able to save them?" Lucy asked. Ryan smiled, despite his age and the seriousness of the situation. "Lucy, you have no idea what humans can do when they put their minds to it. The Krell are about to learn what the Federation should have learned a century ago. Never underestimate humanity." The joint fleet began assembling at the edge of Federation space within weeks of the agreement. Ships from dozens of human worlds joined with the surviving vessels of the Federation Navy. The combined force was the largest military fleet in galactic history. Admiral Marcus Webb commanded the human contingent from his flagship Defiance. Marcus was a veteran of the border wars with the Krell, one of the few officers who had faced them in direct combat multiple times and lived to tell about it. Standing beside him on the bridge was his tactical officer, Commander Kelly Roberts. Kelly had spent years studying Krell battle tactics and had developed new strategies, specifically designed to counter their aggressive assault formations. "Admiral, the Federation ships are reporting ready," Kelly said. "All human vessels are in position. We can begin the advance on your order." Marcus looked at the tactical display showing the massive fleet. Human ships mixed with Zelani vessels, their crews working together despite centuries of separation. It was an alliance born of desperation, but it was an alliance nonetheless. "Signal all ships," Marcus ordered. "Today we fight not for conquest or glory, but to protect the innocent. Today we show the galaxy what happens when free peoples stand together against tyranny." The war for the galaxy's survival was about to begin. A Kepler system had never seen so many ships in one place. The combined human and Federation fleet stretched across space like a metal constellation, thousands of vessels preparing for the battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. In the center of the system, the Krell Empire had built their main staging area, a massive collection of shipyards and supply depots that supported their invasion of Federation space. Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of his flagship Defiance, watching the enemy positions on the main display. The Krell had fortified the system heavily, knowing that eventually someone would come to challenge them. They had not expected that someone to be humanity. Enemy fleet composition? Marcus asked. His tactical officer. Commander Kelly Roberts checked her instruments. 2,000 Krell warships, Admiral, plus their orbital defense platforms and the shipyard complexes. It's the largest concentration of enemy forces we've ever faced. Marcus nodded grimly. This would not be an easy victory. But beside the human ships flew the vessels of the Federation, their crews fighting alongside humanity for the first time in history. The alliance was untested, but it was their only hope. Captain Tony Morrison commanded the heavy cruiser Retribution, one of the most powerful ships in the human fleet. Tony had been born on New Haven, the world that had first successfully defended against Krell attack. He had trained his entire life for this moment, when humanity would strike back against the galaxy's greatest threat. "All weapons charged and ready, Captain," his weapons officer reported. Targeting solutions locked on the enemy flagship. Tony looked at his mixed crew of humans and Zelani working side by side. The alien officers had learned human tactics quickly, while the humans had adapted Federation technology to their own purposes. The combination was proving more effective than either side had expected. "Signal the fleet," Tony said. "Begin the attack." The battle began with a coordinated strike that caught the Krell completely off guard. Human ships attacked from multiple directions at once, their movements coordinated with computer precision. The Federation vessels provided support fire and electronic warfare, jamming Krell communications and sensors. But it was the human ground assault that truly shocked the enemy. Colonel Rick Davis led the combined human and Federation ground forces in their attack on the Krell supply depots. Rick was a veteran of dozens of battles against Krell raiders, and he had learned that the key to defeating them was speed and surprise. "Remember, we hit hard and fast," Rick told his troops over the radio. "Don't give them time to organize a counterattack." Working beside him was Field Marshal Tolvarin of the Federation Defense Corps. The Zelani officer had initially been skeptical of human military methods, which seemed crude compared to Federation precision. But he had quickly learned that human tactics were brutally effective. The first day of battle went better than anyone had dared hope. Human fighters, led by pilots like Captain Nicole Brown and her ship Vigilant, swept through Krell defensive formations like storm winds. Nicole had developed new attack patterns that used the superior speed and maneuverability of human fighters to devastating effect. "This is Eagle Leader," Nicole reported over the radio. "Enemy fighter screen is broken. Beginning attack runs on their capital ships." Her squadron followed her through the Krell defensive fire, their small ships dancing around enemy weapons with impossible grace. When they struck, the results were immediate and devastating. Krell battleships began to list and burn as their engines and weapon systems failed under the precise human attacks. Dr. Gary Phillips watched the battle from his position aboard the command ship Unity. Gary had spent years working with Federation scientists to develop new tactical doctrines that combined human aggression with Zelani precision. The results were beyond anything he had imagined possible. "The integration is working perfectly," Gary reported to Admiral Julia Carter. "Human and Federation forces are operating as a single unit. The Krell can't adapt to our combined tactics." But the enemy was not giving up without a fight. On the second day of battle, the Krell launched a desperate counterattack aimed at breaking the Alliance fleet in half. Their massive battleships advanced in tight formation, concentrating their firepower on the human command vessels. Admiral Marcus Webb felt his ship shake as Krell weapons hammered against its shields. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically to coordinate the fleet's response. Human and Federation ships moved together in complex patterns, covering each other's weaknesses and multiplying each other's strengths. "Admiral, the enemy is trying to split our formation," Commander Kelly Roberts reported. "They're targeting our command and control vessels." Marcus smiled grimly. The Krell were using the same tactics that had worked against Federation fleets for months, but they had never faced an opponent like humanity before. "All ships, execute pattern Delta," Marcus ordered. "Show them what happens when they threaten our friends." A human response was swift and merciless. Ships that had been scattered across the battle zone suddenly converged on the Krell attack formation. Federation vessels provided covering fire, while human ships, close to point-blank range, and unleashed weapons that the Krell had never encountered before. Captain Tony Morrison led the charge aboard Retribution, his ship spearing through the enemy formation like an arrow. Behind him came dozens of other human vessels, their crews fighting with the desperate courage of people defending their homes and families. "Target their flagship," Tony ordered. "All weapons full power." The combined firepower of the human squadron struck the Krell command ship like a hammer blow. The massive enemy vessel, which had seemed invincible, began to break apart under the sustained assault. Its destruction sent shock waves through the Krell fleet. On the ground, Colonel Rick Davis and Field Marshal Tolverin were leading their combined forces in an assault on the main Krell command center. The fighting was fierce, with Krell soldiers defending every corridor and room with fanatical determination. "They're not giving up," Rick said as his troops advanced through the heavily fortified complex. "We're going to have to take this place room by room." Tolverin nodded, his respect for human tactical abilities growing with every hour of combat. "Your people fight with remarkable courage, Colonel. I understand now why the Krell fear you." Breakthrough came on the third day, when Captain Nicole Brown led a daring assault on the Krell command ship that had replaced their destroyed flagship. Her fighter squadron penetrated the enemy's defensive screen and struck at the heart of their fleet coordination system. "Command ship is dead in space," Nicole reported. "Enemy fleet is losing coordination." Without their central command, the Krell fleet began to fall apart. Individual ships fought bravely, but they could no longer coordinate their attacks or support each other effectively. The human and Federation forces pressed their advantage, destroying enemy vessels faster than they could retreat. Admiral Marcus Webb watched the enemy fleet break and run, their ships scattering in all directions as they abandoned the Kepler system. The great Krell staging area was in ruins, its shipyards burning, and its supply depots captured or destroyed. "Signal all ships," Marcus ordered. "Pursue and destroy. Don't let them regroup." The battle raged for 3 more days as the Allied fleet hunted down the fleeing Krell vessels. By the end, the great invasion force that had terrorized the galaxy for months was nothing but scattered wreckage floating in space. The cost had been enormous. Thousands of human and Federation ships had been destroyed. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers and sailors had given their lives. But the sacrifice had not been in vain. The Krell Empire was broken. Their invasion fleet was destroyed, their leadership dead or captured. The worlds they had conquered were being liberated by human and Federation forces working together. The galaxy was safe in the aftermath of victory. Admiral Julia Carter met with the surviving Federation leaders aboard Unity Station. The great space fortress had become a symbol of the new alliance between humanity and the galaxy's older civilizations. "This is just the beginning," Julia told Counselor Prime Belteran. "The Krell will try to rebuild, and there will be other threats in the future. But now we face them together." Belteran nodded, his ancient eyes bright with hope for the first time in months. "We owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You saved us when we had no right to ask for salvation." Julia smiled. "You don't owe us anything. We did what anyone should do when their neighbors are in trouble. We helped." On Earth, Dr. Ryan Clark read the reports of humanity's victory with deep satisfaction. He was now the oldest human alive, one of the last links to the time when his species was still trapped on their homeworld. He had lived to see humanity become the galaxy's protectors. "They finally understand," Ryan said to his assistant Lucy Martinez. "The Federation finally understands what we knew all along. Strength isn't about having the biggest ships or the most advanced technology. It's about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult." Lucy looked at the reports coming in from across the galaxy. Human and Federation ships were working together to rebuild the damaged worlds, to help the survivors, and to establish new defenses against future threats. "What happens now?" Lucy asked. Ryan smiled. "Now we build something better